This podcast is brought to you by Mapper Forward's new Patreon community, the Global Coffee Think Tank. Check the show notes or head to patreon.com/Mapper Forward to find out how you can become a member today. Welcome to another episode of the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. We are starting a new series today with the fabulous Jonas Fijaresu. Jonas, hi, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Lee. It's a pleasure to be here again to talk a little bit about coffee.
The pleasure is mine, my friend. This will be, I think, your third or fourth time on the podcast. There's so many great things that the third time, so many great things that happen in Brazil and so many challenging things that happen in Brazil that we just have to have this conversation again, because we have yet another interesting thing that's been added to the dynamic of the upcoming harvest. So for those who have not met you before, do you mind telling us what you do?
Hello, I'm Jonas Fijaresu. I'm a coffee agronomist from Brazil. I've been working in the coffee chain for 10 years as an agronomist and almost a whole life as a farmer. My family is the fourth generation in coffee fields. My family's been in a coffee field for more than 100 years. And then I start to study the coffee chain as a whole, as an agronomist, not just in fields, but in the cafes and roasters to understand what I need to bring to the farmers in order to give back the expectation that coffee drinkers and coffee lovers want.
Something that really impresses me about the way that you approach what you do is that it's a closed loop system of what you offer. So it's not just on the farm. It's about understanding what the market wants that producers might be selling to, so that you can help producers achieve the results that will help them get better results at market as well, right?
Yeah. I always, when I was just helping my dad with the farm, the coffee farm, I saw that the coffee fields were kind of island, and there's so much happens outside in the symposiums and in the cafes, in the coffee shops, and the farmers do not know exactly what customers want. So for me, it was much easier to understand what customers want, what coffee shops want, what roasters want, and then prepare farmers what they need to offer in order to have better opportunities in the market. This link between these two parts is always, for me, it's so much, it's farther than I think should be, because I think they need to be always close in order to both reach their expectation and so both have profit doing coffee things.
It's something that's always fascinated me since I started this podcast, because we're in our 6th year now, and I'm almost embarrassed. No, I am embarrassed to admit that it wasn't until I started doing this podcast that I became aware of how ignorant I was to what was happening in the entire supply chain. And one of the great gifts of this podcast is that I've got to speak to incredible people like you and producers from all over the world, and people who occupy, parts of the supply chain we wouldn't normally think of, and what role they play as stakeholders in feedback loops for information that could benefit everybody. But, thanks to podcasts and social media and things like that, it's starting to get out there. More producers are making connections with the consuming end, which is fantastic. And what we're starting to see is that people who work in specialty coffee on the consuming end are starting to take more of an interest in what's going on. We definitely saw that last year when the frost hit in Brazil. You did an enormous job in getting the word out through your social media, and we're very grateful for that. Now, in this series, what we're going to talk about with you is the thing that everybody's asking. What's going on in Brazil? How is, what's the yields gonna be like this year? What's happened with the weather patterns? Is climate change real? And is it influencing the way that things are going in Brazil? So this series is about, Brazilian coffee crops, the status of them, and how that's progressing. In the next episode, we're going to talk about where things are at now. In this episode, we're going to ask you to give us a summary of the last couple of harvests. So the 1920 harvest and the 2021 harvest. So give us a bit of a background, if you wouldn't mind, on what the big events were in those last couple of harvests.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting about Brazil, in my opinion, it's how technology helps farmer along the years, even the areas which is very high-tech areas, and even the areas we have like regular small farmers, smallholders that taking care of farms like with 1 hectare, for example. And this is interesting because for a long time, Brazil still keeps the same area of coffee cultivation. It's about 2 million hectares, with a little bit of variation, sometimes for less, and the yield is always going up. This is because of a technology which involves sometimes, because some people think technology it's about a huge machine, but it's about techniques that we are developing to make the coffee give more coffee, which is good because I always said if we have big yields in a small area, we could give coffee for more people without expanding and reaching areas which we could conserve as a forest, for example, as river, as everything. So having good yields, it's good for environmental because we could keep it smaller and have good production of coffee for everyone. So we have a beautiful season in 2000. The harvest was 2020, which was, I think, the biggest harvest of all Brazilian history. It's about it's more than 60 million. I don't remember, 65 or it was the biggest one, millions of bags. And then, as expected, in 2021, last year, we have a smaller season, which is characteristics of the way that we grow coffee in Brazil. We have a big year that coffee bear a lot of coffee berries, and then in the next season, the coffee use the energy to grow branches, and then have a lot of coffee again. It's how the coffee works in Brazil. And some people ask me, but if some farmers start to planting coffee during this, usually you tend to have an equilibrium and then the both seasons equally. But climate events, it's the responsible many times to separate the good year for the bad year, because usually huge climate events makes everything equal again. So if you have a frost or a drought, the potential that we are expecting is frustrated, like we have the season in the next season. So in the 2021, we harvest, I think it's about 46 or 48 million bags in the last year, which are the coffee that the world are drinking now, which we are exporting until we start to harvest the next season, 2022.
And so what were the main weather events we had in 2020 and in 2021, I believe? Correct me if I'm wrong. That drought was very present in both of those harvests, correct?
Yeah, we have a drought problem during the year that we are expecting a lot of rain. And in many areas, mostly in in some areas of the south of Minas Gerais. We have a drought that affect farmers, and then take about a year to coffee to start to cover up. So in 2021, we are expecting a low season, but if we got good rains, but we will probably harvested about 15 to 20% more coffee than we are expecting, because the things are going good before that. But when we got the frost in 2021, was after the harvest or during the harvest in some areas, because the frost just affects the harvest depending of which month we had the frost. In last year, the frost was in
July.
June. Yeah, July. We have three main events, and the coffee was totally formed for 2021 season. But the influence was in the next season, that is now we are going to face the event, the consequences of the event now, because this event, the frost, affects the blossom from the harvest that we'll get now, and in some areas destroy totally the trees. So farmers needs to start again, prune or replant.
And we are going to talk about that in detail in the next episode. So to summarize, if I'm understanding what you said correctly, in 2020, we expected an up year. We had an up year. In 2021, we expected a down year. And because the frost had already turned up, once the cherries were already there, it didn't really have that much of an influence. So we had a down year, but then we had a major event that could influence the outcome of this coming harvest. Did I get that right? Great.
Yeah.
We'll talk in the next episode about what we're expecting to happen in this harvest. Awesome. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks, friends. If you enjoyed this video, here's what you should check out next. Consider supporting Map It Forward on Patreon, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell before you leave.